All right, good evening. Welcome to the September 12th Newmarket Planning Board meeting. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. First on the agenda is public comments. Anybody have anything to talk about that's not on the agenda? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing the public comments at 7:02. Next is acceptance of minutes. We're gonna postpone the acceptance of the July 11th minutes, but we'll talk about I'll accept the motion for the August 8th minutes, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the August 8th minutes.
Any discussion? Comments?
Give me a second. I'll second it.
Anybody have any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Dale's abstaining. Thank you. Motion passes.
Who's voting this evening?
Mikhail's gonna sit in for Jeff. Jeff Goldenoff will not be here. Mikhail will
We're
fill in
also
for him.
missing
And this is,
Tim.
oh yeah.
We're also missing Tim.
Yeah. So Abigail, you'll sit in for Tim then?
And welcome.
Yeah, yeah, welcome. I didn't do it formally in front of everybody. Yeah.
So I'm assuming you would abstain as well.
You'll be scratching your head before you're done this. Not this particular meeting, just after you're done, you run the planning board. First on the agenda is regular business pursuant to RSA 676:4 and Appendix A subdivisions, Appendix B site plans, and paragraph 32-236 affordable elderly housing of the municipal code of the town of Newmarket, New Hampshire. Continuation of a public hearing shall be held for an application filed by D.R. Lemieux Builders LLC requesting minor subdivision, major site plan, and special use permit approval for a proposed development seeking to create a split lot subdivision with the original lot, 0.54 acres, retaining the existing single-family housing unit, and the new lot, 7.22 acres, constructing a 32-unit, age-restricted multifamily development with associated utilities, parking, landscaping, and stormwater mitigation infrastructure located on real property with an address of 242 South Main Street, tax map U4, lot 69, within the R2 zoning district. So, to update people that are at home and people that are here that don't know, since the last meeting, which was the July meeting, I believe, we had a TRC meeting, which was productive, and we had a site walk, which I thought was very informative. With that, I will open it up. I see Mr. FX Bruton here for the applicant. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As the chair mentioned, my name is FX Bruton. I'm with Bruton and Barabee in Dover, New Hampshire, and I'm here to represent the applicant. With me tonight, representatives of the applicant, Dave Lemieux and Heather Dresch are here, as well as our design team, which involves Christian Smith, the engineer, and tonight we have Sarah Horahan as well, the project architect. Sitting in for Jeff Dirk is Daniel Lasavita. Said that correctly? Pretty close. And sitting in for Robbie Woodburn is Vicky Martell, who's here as well. And all of those people will be getting up to kind of just give you updates. We went through a very lengthy presentation last time. I'm not going to try and rehash that, but as the chair mentioned, we started quite a while ago on the project in March with a conceptual review. Then we went to public hearing in July, and then we had a site walk at the end of July with the TRC happening in the interim between this meeting and that. Very productive for us. We hope you will agree that the comments that were made were taken in earnest and resulted in significant design changes with respect to the project to try and address the concerns of the abutters, but also the board that were raised. So we are excited to show those final changes to you tonight. and look forward to doing that. One of the things that I mentioned, just to kind of put this in context too, is that this is a project of affordable elderly housing. That those are three good words. Sometimes I stand up in front of boards and I use words like junkyards and gravel pits, and those aren't good words, but I hope everyone would agree those three words that I've used and that we're here for to look at are all good words and things that are encouraged, obviously, by the town and its ordinance. And obviously, we all know there's a need not only for affordable housing, but to take care of our elderly. So we're really excited to bring the project. The project and the ordinance limits where we can bring this project. Very, very limited areas within the town. Has to have water and sewer, but also has to be located either on Route 108, 152, or Bennett's Way. I'm sure you all know those areas. All of those areas are similar to where we're located, and what I mean by that is that all of those areas have single-family houses on the entire stretch of all of those roads. So when the town looked to create areas where these facilities would go, they put it in the context of what existed, which is either businesses or single-family homes. And we think we have probably one of the last sites available on those roads that fits very well with the intent of the ordinance. And we likened ourselves to Wadley Falls facility, which is up the road, but further away from town. And one of the things that the ordinance looks at is convenience for the residents to the town. We highlighted the very short distances to the center of town, to healthcare facilities, to all the services. So everything that the ordinance was looking for, again, we think we've met and we think we've addressed, and we think this site is good. What the ordinance didn't provide is that we could go onto Bay Road or Church Street or Water Street or Elm Street or Ash Swamp Street, or Road, excuse me. It was very limited in terms of where we could go. So that's why we're here, because that's where we are, and we think that the project fits there. So we outlined why we were compliant with all the rest of the technical zoning requirements. We meet the height requirement of 35 feet, which is similar to Wadley Falls senior housing. We described our choice for making this project work in terms of having the first two initial floors underneath the eave of a roof, and then locating additional residents in the shed dormers of the attic space. What we also described was if we built a building with just an attic, it would be the same height, the same presentation. We went through a process of changing the orientation of the building so that the bulk of the building would not be facing along or parallel with the street. But we changed the orientation, so really the focus is on the gable end of the building. And we think all of that led to what the board is also looking for in terms of the buffering of the project to the neighborhood in a functional way. And I highlighted in a letter that I hope all of you have seen and read, and that was addressed to the chair, and it talked about kind of looking and taking a deeper dive into the ordinance and the word language that was used. At the site walk, I made the comment the building isn't supposed to be invisible, and members of the board agreed at that point that that is true. And I think if any rational and reasonable review of your ordinance would suggest that's very, very true, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. One of the things, again, in terms of doing all of that is we focused on creating a landscape plan that we thought was appropriate. We have a licensed landscape architect put this together. It's not done by anyone who's not familiar with how to do that. We had 4 iterations. In my letter, I provided the 4 iterations which I identified as that which we presented at the concept hearing, that which we presented at the the public hearing. Then at site walk, we added more buffering to that, and then as a result of the comments at site walk, we came with you with a final, what I call the existing plan, which really shows a very robust level of landscaping. And we're going to have Vicki come up and just kind of show you that and just walk through what we did in that regard. So the ordinance itself, I won't go through, basically reading my letter, but the words that were used is, doing things that are to the maximum extent possible with due regard to the affordability of the project, or sufficiently excluded, reasonably consistent, partially screened, adequately shielded. Those are the words that come out of your ordinance. Obviously, they suggest that these are not absolutes, that we again have to have this green monster, if you will, for wraparound, no visibility of the project. And I don't think that's what the ordinance suggests in any form or fashion. In a sense, in response to concerns and issues raised, that's kind of what we did. We did create that wall. We created it not only in the front, but we've created it on the side where we have a house that we're going to subdivide off. Extraordinary measures, in my opinion, but we did it in response to our interactions with all of you, and we hope that that is looked at it in the same way. One of the things that I emphasized was that there is a density to these projects, and in your ordinance, because providing affordable elderly housing is so important, you have a provision that allows us to ask for density bonuses. Those are unique in any zoning ordinance. In this case, we propose 32 units. However, without the density bonus, we could put 39 units, so we have less density. With the density bonus, and by the way, we meet all the criteria of the bonus, we could have 49 units. That's something that the developers decided not to pursue and try to accomplish. And that's despite meeting all of the requirements of your density bonus calculation. And I think that really highlights the reasonable approach the developer has taken, not only in preparing the design, but in being responsive to the initial concerns by staff and the board in terms of how we could create a project that creates a balance between what we have to do to make it work, what the town would like to see, what the abutters hopefully would like to see, and address their concerns. And we may not have addressed all of them. I understand how that works. But we think what we've done is address every element of the ordinance, and we've listened to the concerns. We've over-designed to accommodate those concerns, and we've underdeveloped in terms of the density with that thought in mind. So again, just to summarize from my perspective, this the sense of buffering, orientation, and density speaks very well to what the concerns could be in a project like this, and we think we have fully addressed those concerns. I am going to now defer to a couple of the design professionals who were provided with some input from your peer review. We've addressed, and I think they'll explain how we have addressed all of those issues. We came up with, out of those comments, 2 conditions of approval. I provided those to your planner, and he can share those with you. I can certainly do that too. But one of the things I remembered after the fact was that in the beginning of the project, and one of the benefits to the town too, is that this parcel has a drainage area that the town utilizes. We've already had the town come on willingly and do what they wanted to do in terms of work, and then we're willing to, and as a condition of approval, grant the appropriate easement for them to have that right to do that in perpetuity. So that's a benefit to the town as well. What I'm going to have is Christian Smith come up first and just go through the peer comments that you received, that we received, and how we've addressed them, and then we'll just kind of go from there. Thank you.
Christian, can I just stop you for a second before you start?
Of course.
I hope you're not planning on going through every question.
God, no.
Yeah, just go through the big stuff, please.
Yeah, only going through the outstanding comments or comments that UEI deflected to the planning board.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Christian, did you submit the updated plan sets to the planning board? We don't have them in our packet.
The ones that UEI reviewed, yeah, we brought them in on the 31st of August, I believe.
Wait, you don't have them in front of you?
Do you have them?
Can you hear me?
No. How many sets did you bring in?
Pardon?
Do you recall how many sets you brought in?
I believe it was 3 large and 12 reduced.
So you don't have any sets in front of you? Can you hear me?
Oh, Bart's talking, but he's not coming through right now.
Bart, I can't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Let's see if we can get it to them, but,
No, okay.
yeah. If that, we have to, we will. You know what, Christian, why don't you go ahead?
Okay,
And we'll
and
bring him
unfortunately, you guys are without plan sets?
Correct.
Okay. All right. For starters, my name is Christian Smith, engineer with Beals Associates, representing the applicant on this project. As FX mentioned, we have gone through a full round of review and response with Underwood Engineers. And as we discussed at the outset, I will limit my comments to those that either have something still outstanding or they would prefer to get some input from you folks moving forward. So with regard to number 1, this was the original comment specific to the site layout. And they mentioned that they are very happy with the fact that we're trying to get this all designed out of the municipal wetland setbacks and maintain all of the environmental features on the property. They just feel that there was, that there should be additional crosswalks, sidewalks, things of that nature for the pedestrian traffic within the property. And, essentially, we took a hard look at this, and, vehicles inside that parking lot are going to be doing 5, maybe 10 miles an hour. 10 miles an hour would probably be reckless, in my opinion. So we did not add any of those features in. We feel that walking in a parking lot is very commonplace. I mean, in commercial parking lots with a lot more traffic, probably traveling a lot faster, you don't see these internal sidewalks, crosswalks, that kind of thing. So we did not propose that, and they deferred back to you. And so we would like to hear some input from you folks if you're comfortable with the way the design is and the fact that, yes, people might have to walk across a travel aisle to get to their vehicle or to get to the dumpster. To me, that just doesn't seem like a very dangerous situation.
Are you, what number are you on?
I am on number 1.
Okay.
Number,
All right, but, yeah, because there's another comment about specifically what you're talking to later.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple of replicas that talk to similar ideals or ideas on in the letter, so I'll try and cover those all together, but yes.
Some comment? I'm okay with it, but, it is low speed.
Yeah, and if you're not watching out for your neighbors, this is probably not the place for you.
What's everybody else think?
I think that it's crammed in there, and that it would be better if it didn't require that kind of travel across the parking lot. It feels very very confined in the space that you have. And yeah, I don't think there's a lot of space in that parking lot for people to walk around or do anything, really. I mean, and the dumpsters, there's no way to get to that dumpster without walking through the parking lot, which in the other developments I looked at, it didn't look like that. It looked like there was sidewalk. Like at Wadley Falls, there's sidewalk on both sides to get to the dumpsters, which are set to the side so people don't have to walk across a parking lot to get to a dumpster.
No, and that's understood. I mean, again, our real focus here was trying to completely stay out of the wetland features on the property and their setbacks. We were able to achieve that, and I mean, from this front door to the dumpster, it's about 180 feet. If somebody doesn't want to take that stroll, they'll probably put the trash in the trunk, drive out there in the little pull-off, throw it in, and on the way they go. But, I mean, you know, they're insinuating that even walking across these aisles is not ideal. I mean, to get to the parking stalls in here, you know, we're talking 50, 60 feet. It's just, with vehicles intentionally going in there to park at those low speeds, I just don't see this as a pedestrian hazard.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Scott? No. No? Okay, Abigail?
It just seemed to me that the site layout intent is to minimize the impacts to the wetlands.
Correct.
Or the disturbance in the crossing. I think that's why we ended up in this particular location, as to site layout
On the site.
intent on the
Right.
site.
Yep.
I think the intent has been met. Striking this balance is obviously a big discussion as to the layout of the site within that particular area.
Yeah, it is tight in that area, no doubt about it, but it's to stay out of the wetland setbacks and whatnot. So-
It seemed more important to us, and I mean, I think it's a very, very low propensity for, you know, vehicle-human conflict. That's what we're going through there.
Well, we can talk amongst ourselves after too, to
Sure.
get you more.
All right, yep, so let's move on. Under the existing conditions plan, heading number 5, we had gotten the as-built water main from DPW. It shows up on all of our plans. Doucette did not add that to their existing condition plan. That's an easy fix. We will literally send them on. Then we're on to 8B. And this one is specific to consideration of an alternate parking layout. And again, this is a reiteration of number 1, as we all recognize. So I think we've pretty much gone over that. You know, if you guys have additional comments or conversations you might have amongst the board members, and provide us with any input later on in the hearing, that's perfectly fine.
Before we do this, I just have to, I think this is what I was saying, hoping to get Patrick's comment. Were there other options that you looked at relative to
Well, we
addressing
looked
this?
at line striping and, I mean, to get the requisite number of parking stalls, with a couple of extra, because that was important to us. You know, this is kind of the hand we're dealt with this existing condition and the wetland setback, which we really fought to avoid.
And I understand that UE had also a question or concern about only having 2 additional parking spaces, but under the research that you did, it was like 0.61 per.
Right.
So does it make sense that there should be any discussion of further waivers for parking spots in order to balance this?
Again, I would point to Wadley Falls. Wadley Falls has 52 units. It has 58 parking spaces, 6 guest parking spaces. I went up there 3 times this week. Every time I went up there, 90% of the parking was taken at the lot. So I think we've already decreased. I mean, I think they should have 10% set aside for guest parking, which is what Wadley Falls had. that would be an appropriate amount of parking. But to go down from any further from 2 would be ridiculous. I just don't think that that's,
So what you're saying is Wadley Falls is contrary to what the statistics are.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
saying that that's not what we're seeing in the other unit that's similar to this one in our town.
And I would just respond to that with those 2 incidents. I absolutely believe what you're saying. But members of our team have been through there on numerous occasions and have seen their lot 50% or less occupied. So I'm sure that has to do with kind of the or something along those lines. But, it's not a guarantee that every single person that's living in development is going to have their own vehicle. I mean, the parking we provide is slightly easier.
Did not the traffic study say you really need 26 spots?
Am I
I will defer to that, Mr. Russell, do all of that, but.
But and the only reason I'm asking is, so if you need 26, and I could be wrong with that number, then in theory you'd have 6 visitor parking.
Yeah, well, I mean, typically.
Not the way it's laid out.
ITE definitely has a reduced number of parking stalls required per capita in a
Right.
restricted development, without question. But Dan can speak to that when he comes up to do his presentation as well. There's a couple items he wants to go over with the GPI comments also.
Right.
Um,
So, but
yeah,
what
we
I'm,
can revisit that. Yep.
but what I'm hearing is that at this point, there's no appetite from the board to reduce parking spaces to accommodate a crosswalk or something like that. Is that that's what I'm hearing? That's certainly what Patrick is saying. no doubt.
That's what I think, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, we did look at, line stripes, walking aisles as well, crossing aisles. It just doesn't seem to make a great deal of sense, and, the maintenance and such on that.
Right.
Probably spot.
Well, like everything here, we'll discuss amongst
Yes.
ourselves. We don't agree, and we'll get back to you. Yep.
So then we are on to 8B. So the backing and turning must be provided at both dead ends for time of the entry. And I think what you and I was driving at there was they wanted us to put kind of hammerheads off the ends of those dead end aisles. But with regard to box trucks, delivery trucks that are going to come in there, they can use the drive aisle. We have widened the aisle out to 25 feet per the regulations. There's plenty of turning movement for those types of vehicles, and with a 25-foot aisle, virtually every every passenger vehicle you can think of can back out and make a hard left turn or a hard right turn, whatever they need to get to the entrance aisle. And again, we're trying to eliminate from these things. We ran a lot of different vehicles, and they can all back straight out, make a turn, and drive out. Again, that's another way to say,
Is that also true for the dumpster pickup?
the dumpster pickup would like to come in, go left or right, back up, and head, because typically, Val, those have the forks on the front.
Right.
And yes, we have
But do you
laid that out
anticipate-
so they can get into it, dump, go back out, and then
So you're anticipating they'll back onto 152?
no.
Or so how, they would be turning internally?
Yeah, they would pull into the driveway. See where these move, back up to the head of the straight,
Okay.
drop it back up. And more often than not, those dumpster pickups are either very early in the morning or later in the afternoon, when there's not a lot of traffic in the parking lot itself. So I think that's more than adequate for their traffic.
So on this one, I just need clarification at some point. I'm confused whether this is a regulation or something that somebody would want us to do. I couldn't
Well,
find
yeah, we
it.
have the regulations, Chairman, and it basically says the vehicle will be able to back up. And transport. So there was nothing specific to put in front of us.
That's what I thought, but
It just says the vehicle will be able to make the turn.
okay, Anybody have any questions on that one? Comments?
If you had plans, I can show you what the plan is. All right, so then we're on to 8D, and that is with regard to the.
Excuse me, is that your mic, is that the microphone up there?
Let me see. I can turn it off.
Lights up there in the back, so.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I think it's Bart. He's muted, but
Bart, can you hear us?
we can't hear him.
Ugh. All right. I apologize. Onward.
No, no problem. So essentially, the municipal regulations have a slight conflict with itself where it requires all regular spaces to be 18 feet in width, and then it goes on to say that ADA spaces should be 20 feet in width. And it seems very peculiar to me to have an ADA stall that would project the lines 2 feet into the travel aisle. Did you guys get the waiver request?
I have a waiver request. I don't
Okay, well, that
I don't
was the
remember
only
if it's
one
for that
we
one or
had,
not.
so. You know, we researched this. ADA requires an 18-foot wide stall, or long stall. So the stall is actually ADA compliant. I think there's just a bizarre little conflict in the local ordinance.
So,
So we did request a waiver to
yeah, I
20-foot
actually,
length down to 18
I-
for ADA stalls.
so what you're saying is that the 18 feet is ADA compliant.
It is ADA compliant. In
So-
fact, we did a great deal of research trying to find non-commercial vehicles, non-medical vehicles that are handicap accessible vans. And the longest one we could find was just short of 17 feet, which would absolutely fit an 18-foot long stall.
Yeah, I mean, that
And
doesn't
make
make,
all those arguments in the waiver request.
right, to me, that doesn't make sense to have one parking space or two spaces be 2 feet longer than the rest.
Yeah.
As long as it's ADA compliant, as long as it meets the regulations, I think that's reasonable. Anybody else have any?
Do you want to take that waiver up at this point, Mr. Chairman, since we're here? Or?
No, we'll
Okay.
move on.
There we go. Then we're on to H, and those of you that were at the TRC hearing will recall this one. There was comment that vehicles that park in these stalls, yes, there are going to be, grounds for apartments there. And basically said consider alternative layouts or screening option between the two uses. Our response was this is at the developer's discretion. They referred to you, and in speaking with developers, part of their contracts for these is they actually have to provide signs that will effectively eliminate, any of that type of intrusive work. And they've done this before, and have not had a problem.
My opinion is we shouldn't even be talking about this. It's not one of our regulations, so,
That was my opinion too, but.
how does everybody else feel? I mean, if it's our regulation, it's a different story, but this is a preference.
Okay, so we're on to I. And this is specific to, again, we're back to parking spaces, numbers of parking spaces. And there, again, kicking this back to you, I think we've pretty much covered all of the parking and numbers of spaces and that kind of thing, unless you want to go over it.
No, we know where you stand on that, absolutely. We don't need to talk about that again at this point.
And we're on to J now, and there was a comment specific to no parking signs along Route 152. It was brought up by the road agent at TRC that that would take Board of Selectmen approval to even get done. He wasn't really in favor of it, but if you guys feel it's a good idea, we would be more than happy to talk to the Board of Selectmen about whether or not they would allow that.
I personally leave it up to DPW. let them figure out what they want to do.
Yeah, there's a couple of other things that UEI wants us to review with Rick, so, you know, the location of the hydrant, the final location of the additional manhole that we put in to deflect or defer the clean out, so we can cover that one with him as well.
Yeah, I mean, if Rick says he wants no parking signs, then we put up no parking signs.
Very good.
That's my opinion, right?
Part of
Everybody?
a condition of approval, that's
Don't
what
have
it
to
is.
be.
Yeah. Then it appears we're on to number 9, and again, that is back to the parking lot and the distance from the dumpster to the door, which, as I mentioned to you, is about 180 feet. People can put their trash in the trunk and drive it down there if they don't feel like making the trek. Moving quickly on to number 12. So we have added all of the required or requested transformer generator and underground propane tank. And this thing mobile. So I'll come over here. It's not depicted on this sheet, but it's,
Yeah, can you turn it on?
yeah, this is where the AV guy told me to put it, but I can certainly turn
I
it.
was gonna bring it up.
I think he's going to put it on the screen. There we go. Prior 1, Bart, if you can hear me. Up 1, yes.
Can you hear me now?
All right, well, I can show you here where it was. Essentially, the generator, we have an area out back here that is devoid of the wetland buffer. We located the generator as well as the underground propane tank out here. And, you know, just like at my house, the delivery driver for the fuel is going to park here and simply walk back. And that's very short distance. We're talking about 40 feet maybe. With the hose that they unwind off the back of the propane trucks and fill the tank.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on that, any board members?
All right, moving on.
But before you skip over 13,
Pardon me?
before you skip over 13,
Yep.
so the silt fencing has been revised. Is any of it in the buffer?
No. It's on the edge of the buffer, and, you know, again, we provide the option for either the mulch berms or the silt fence. Sometimes a combination of both is the best option, but yeah, no, those are pegged right on the buffer's belt. And then we're on to 17, which is specific to snow storage, and UEI is questioning if the board would like to see no snow dumping signs or something of that nature, just where those 2 stormwater ponds are. And the applicant has no issue putting them up if you think it's worthwhile.
What's everybody think?
The locations haven't changed, right?
Correct.
Why don't you continue? We'll
Move
go
on.
back to your-
Yep. Okay, so 19, they just say coordinate with number 28. We'll hit that when we get there. Number 20, they defer the location of the hydrant to the fire department. Again, we'll make sure it's where Rick Malasky pointed it out, TRC. I'll just get confirmation from him this year. it's where he wants to be, or where he wants it to be. Number 24, this is specific to the manhole that replaced the cleanout in just the sewer service to the building. And they request that we put the manhole on the right-of-way as opposed to within it. And again, when we contact Rick, we'll go over that item as well. If he wants it on the property line, we'll put it on the property line. I thought if it was in the right-of-way and they had to do anything with it, it was probably more convenient, but wherever Rick wants it, it will go. 27, so this is just specific to the pollutant removal / PTAP filing with UNH. And basically, they're just saying that they reserve the right to review the suitability of that, what we cited as our percent removals for the nitrogen, phosphorus, and all of that, until after we made a minor revision to the stormwater model. Number 28, that is with regard to how the how the front downspouts get to the stone trenches. And if you look at the architectural plans on sheet PDO3, they depict both rear and front gutters with downspouts on both corners of the building. And essentially where those trenches stop toward the front, those will just be piped underground and the water will be delivered into the upper regions of the stone drip edge. It's really quite simple. Any questions on that, or should I keep moving?
Keep moving, please.
You got it. Number 30 is specific to freeboard, and they cite 1 foot of freeboard is not demonstrated in the 50-year storm. And while that is written as a guideline, the alteration of terrain doesn't hold you to a 1 foot freeboard at the 50-year storm. And these ponds actually hold the 100-year storm without overtopping. So it's our opinion that they are perfectly adequate and designed probably in excess of alteration of terrain requirements. That we can deal with them directly on. That's not an issue. Number 31, with regard to hydraulic coupling. So this one's a bit, I'll try to explain it to you very briefly. So when we create the drainage model, we have a little pond that is a sediment forebay. We design the overflow. Then we have a second pond, which is the bioretention pond. They wanted us to combine those, which you can do because there's an option to put in a second storage component in the HydroCAD. And I'm thinking that they were concerned that when I did that, those ponds were going to overtop. In doing that, I did that iteration yesterday after I got this memo, and it actually reduces the peak flow, the peak water elevation in those ponds by just a couple of tenths on both counts. So again, we'll go over that with them. That's nothing that you guys need to have input on unless you would like to discuss it.
No, thank you.
Okey-doke. All right. And again, PTAP, that's a coupling of the one we just talked about with regard to the pollutant removals. And the new comments are specific to property lines. I did not have the updated Doucette plans in that final set of drawings. And the setback lines mirror that. I did bring reduced copies. I do have them from Doucette, and I do have them in the formal plan set. So you can all have a copy of that. And would it be useful for you folks to have, I've got a full set of current plans on that board that I can pull down. You guys can pass around if you think that's useful.
Yeah, if we have questions, we'll as we go on, absolutely.
You want me to pull them down, Mr. Chairman?
Not at this point, but
Okay.
as we go on through discussion, if we have questions, we can pull them down and look at them.
That sounds good. So I think, it's a fairly short list. It's a fairly clean letter. There's a bit of reiteration going on in there with regard to multiple comments, questions about virtually the same thing, but by and large, I think we're 95+% of the way there.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Smith? Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
our presentations will be a lot shorter and brief because input was less in terms of what we're going to discuss, but we'd like, I'm sorry?
You're not coming through the mic.
I'm not coming through the mic? Oh, so I was just saying the rest of our presentation is shorter than Christian. But in any event, we're going to have Daniel from Vanessa come up and talk about the review done with respect to traffic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the record, my name is Daniel Civita, or La Civita, same thing, I get called both. Traffic engineer with Vanessa and Associates. I will keep things very brief. Since the last public hearing, we had the TRC meeting, as you know, as well as completed the peer review process on the traffic study through GPI. As of yesterday, we got a pretty much clean peer review letter from Bob at GPI. There was just one outstanding comment relating to motor vehicle crashes, which had been requested from the police department. Supplement will be filed when we do receive those. Pending from the TRC meeting, there was 2 comments raised related to traffic, one about just making sure and dimensioning the offset between the proposed driveway and Grant Road, which was added. It is 50 feet. And then the other one was looking at sight lines at the proposed crosswalk, which is proposed on the west side now of the elementary school driveway. Sight lines meet the required safe minimums, and those are in our, both of those comments are addressed in our responses to GPI. I'd be happy to walk through should the board want, but I get the feeling most likely not. Then I'll be here to answer any questions related to parking. I did look it up. It was 21 spaces is what IT says. Do what you will with that.
I have a question for you.
Yep.
And I think GPI commented on it. The site triangle, those are on the plans now, correct?
Correct.
The
They're
sight line
on.
triangles. And so some of those, that part of the triangle is on the right of way and some is on private property?
I believe all of it, and Christian can confirm, is on our property.
Yeah, if it's on private property, it's on David's property.
Okay, it's all on that?
Correct.
that property.
We do not spill over onto any of our properties.
Okay.
So, will the clearing, does it show on the plan now that the area to be cleared will meet the GPI final comment on the site triangle?
Yes, it will meet the minimum required for ASHTO, which is the standard for traffic engineers, as well as the town standard. It's 310 feet, I believe. Christian can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, so we have 310 to here, and it just requires about, I'm not sure if you can see this. It requires clearing. There's a little bit of shrub that leads out in the right of way there. And then this direction, because of all the clearing that Mr. Malasky wants us to do through the right of way there, we have an access of one.
So,
Hey.
okay, excuse me one second. Christian, can I ask a stupid question?
Please.
If you're looking towards the school, right, looking east,
Yep.
coming out, looking to your left, coming out of the park
Yep.
driveway, that's all maintained by the town,
Yes.
right? So you'll have to be in agreement with DPW that the owner of this property keeps that clear
Yes.
in perpetuity. What about going the other direction?
Same.
But is that maintained by the state? Would that require a state permit?
No.
No, it's still all under town.
Because there's no vegetation beyond Grant Road, which I think the urban compact is right here. There's
Okay.
no vegetation in the right of way at that point. And in fact, even this looking to the west, all of that this sight line remains within the right of way. It doesn't lead on the property to get that 310 feet. I think the ordinance requires 300 property.
Right, but what I'm asking though, it's in the right of way, that's town right of way, that's not the area that's maintained by the state. 'Cause I know the
Like I said,
driveway
I
is
think-
close to where the break off is, right?
Yeah, I think the state takes this, and urban compact starts here. But this is all clear as well, with regard to vegetation in that road.
Yeah, it is right now, right?
Yeah.
But in 10 years, I mean, so I guess if that needed to be cleared, would you go to the state or Rick will ask?
Well, till we get to the western side of Grant Road, we go to Rick, and then from there we'd have to talk to the state.
So I can't see, how far beyond Grant Road does it go?
Well, this is the westerly edge of Grant Road, and the site distance goes here. This is a 40 scale plan, so probably 80 feet.
Okay.
Well, if you look at this map you just did, right, there's Grant Road on the top of it.
Can you comment
Yeah,
on,
it's beyond the property.
Yeah.
can you comment on the GPI comment that the desirable ISD, the 445 feet to the west, will not be achieved?
Yes. So I may get a little technical here, but there's two types of sight distances: stopping sight distance and intersection sight distance. The desirable, or ISD, intersection sight distance is such that a vehicle traveling along the main line doesn't have to slow down to less than 70% of their speed to allow a vehicle to come out of the driveway. So that is more for efficiency rather than safety. The safe minimum is required that the stopping sight distance and intersection sight distance at least be the same. So in this case, the required stopping sight distance, the distance along the roadway, is 305 feet based on the speed. So the required intersection sight distance is also that 305, which we meet with the 310. The desirable for the efficiency of the intersection is 445. And that is something I will have to go back and look on, but similar to the conversation we were just having about clearing vegetation, whether it's on private property, whether it's in the town right-of-way, DOT right-of-way. I believe that we can expand that site triangle to get additional line of sight, just pending approval from whoever it happens to be.
And most of that would be on that.
Yes, yeah.
And GPI is looking at that for safety reasons?
GPI essentially made the comment just to point out and make sure that everyone is aware that while yes, we do meet the minimums, there is a desirable for efficiency's sake rather than for safety that is not met.
Is that based on? Hold on one sec, if you, let him finish and then you can come up to the microphone, okay? One sec, are you all set? Come on up, sir.
So is that based on the posted 30-mile-an-hour speed limit? Or is that those sight lines and that triangle based on the actual, well, they've calculated a 37-mile-an-hour average on that stretch. So what's that based on, the 30 or the 37?
That 305 feet is based on 40 miles an hour. We did speed travel measurements. We found that the 85th percentile travel speed was 37 miles an hour in both direction, and the 85th percentile is what's often used when creating speed limits and things like that. So we rounded up to the nearest 5 to get 40 miles an hour.
Does that answer your question, sir? Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other questions? Traffic? Thank you.
No problem.
So we're going to ask Vicki Martell to come up, and she's going to show you the new and existing landscaping plan and just go through that and describe that for you briefly.
Bart have the plans you're going to present that he can put up here?
Yeah, he does.
But
Yeah,
And you can turn that back so all the board can see it.
oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's the same.
I think Bart's trying to.
Yeah. Bart, I think Bart is saying.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Very, very faintly, Bart.
Very faintly. Can you hear me now?
No better.
Sorry. Keep working on it. Can you, is the right plan set? Right,
Yes, that's the right plan.
okay, great,
Okay,
so you
good.
can hear me.
Why don't you present the plan?
Okay. Good evening, I'm Vicki Martell from Woodburn and Company Landscape Architecture. So I'll run through this quickly and just highlight the changes from the last time you've reviewed the plan. So we have about 8 trees that are interior to the parking lot. Those are the same trees that you've seen in the previous submissions. At the entry into the parking lot, we have a pair of deciduous trees with some ornamental shrubs below them. And then we have a robust evergreen screen going right along South Main Street along the whole front of the development. And then what we've added from the last submission that you've seen is along the eastern property line there where there's that existing home, we've added a 6-foot tall solid board privacy fence, and then that's backed on the development side with an evergreen screen. And those are 8 to 10 feet tall western red cedars, the green giant variety. So it's that really robust buffer separating that existing home from the proposed development. That's what's been added from the last submission that you reviewed based on your comments. And then we do have a few renderings. Would you like me to go over those? Or?
We have one rendering in our package. Does everybody have the rendering? I don't know.
Bart,
Oh.
This is the rendering. Yeah, you have.
Yeah, that's
you
the
have
one you-
3. This is the one I think the chair was holding.
Yeah, that's the one I like.
So this is the rendering
Let's
shown.
get for the audience.
Bart,
We
put
could,
the same one.
I'm trying to find a bullet thing.
It shows the subdivided house.
Right, the fence.
There you go.
So this is that new rendering that's depicting, as you can see, that proposed fence. That's a 6-foot tall solid board privacy fence. And then behind that fence, peeking up over the top of it, are the evergreen trees. And you can see the little tops of them. They're a little difficult to see because we are retaining those existing trees behind the fence. But there's another line of evergreens.
What size are the evergreens again, behind the 6-foot fence, that planting?
They're 8 to 10 feet tall at planting, and then in the rendering, they're represented, actually, they look like they're probably represented very close to that height.
So the ones on the front, you upgraded those to like 12 foot?
Correct, yes. So the ones on the front, those are also 8 to 10 feet tall at planting, and then those are depicted to represent about 5 years after installation, so those are represented at around 12 feet in height.
And how tall will those grow eventually?
They could grow to become very tall, 50 to 60 feet plus if they're happy and in the long term.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you.
So the board asked Brian White, the appraiser, to provide additional information. So that's what he did, and that was maybe not in your packets as well, but it's up, basically the whole thing would be up on the screen, and I'm sure Bart will put that up, but he will describe it, which I think is probably the best thing that you could hear.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and the board. I was asked to expand my initial analysis from the first time that we met. In my original report, I had 5 comps from 4 nearby cities and towns, and those are represented in the yellow color. along with the development location, the town, the population of that town, the address and the assessor that I spoke with, and their comments on value impact. And the first survey was 5 comps. There was no diminution of value noted by any of the assessors. And the assessors are the ones in the town that have all the sales data, and they would know if anybody had any issues or complaints on any diminution of value over time after a senior housing development was constructed, and nobody had seen any diminution. And in fact, Jim Rice in Durham had one property where he said the neighborhood that Baghdad Woods is located in actually saw an increase in value over time that was greater than other similar near downtown neighborhoods, let's say. So I was asked to expand the search, and I went and got another 10 comps. I tried to concentrate on properties that were similar in size and population to Newmarket or close to Newmarket, and also had to have recent development of a senior housing development over the last decade or two, and spoke with the assessor to get their same information on possible diminution of value from their experience. And as you can see, of the additional 10 that were respondents in my survey, none of them saw any diminution of value in any measurable amount. So my conclusion the first time we met was that if this is built as proposed, there would be no diminution in value. And now we've got additional data, 3 times the data, that says similar things, and that my conclusion remains the same.
So every single one that says none, you either spoke or were in communication with the assessor? And that's
Yes,
how-
I spoke with the assessor in detail about what I was doing, their property, their experience, if there's any diminution value around that property, and they all said none. There wasn't any comment of anything close to any issue once I tracked all these assessors down, it took some time, the response was almost the same.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Bart, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now a little bit. We had spoken a while ago, you were going to try to speak with our assessor. You able to speak with our assessor?
Yes, and he was mentioned in the report as well. He was
Yes.
part of the analysis.
Well, that was
So
Lovely Falls, right?
So he came to the same conclusion
Yeah.
as Mr. White.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Is this all of the developments in each of these towns?
I went off of a list of statewide developments that had received funding, and then went from there to try to meet the criteria of nearby towns such as Exeter, Stratham, Lee.
So in other words, there's 2 in Durham and 1 in Exeter.
Yeah, so the ones that I surveyed when I talked to the assessor, I went and said, what other properties do you have in town that we can talk about? And none of this came up if I was able to communicate
Thank
about
you.
one property with that
So
assessor.
that's all. I just wondered if that was all of them.
Yeah,
Thank
now,
you.
Yeah, there's more in the state, but some of them were in Manchester. A lot of these developments go in, elderly housing wants to be around services, so
No,
Manchester wouldn't have been a good.
Do you know if these were located adjacent to single-family residential properties?
Yeah, most of these are all in residential areas or areas of mixed use. They vary from what their location is.
Well, but you could say Wapping Falls is in a residential area, right? And this is very, very different visually from Wapping Falls. I think it's a very difficult thing to do. Yeah.
Sorry, gentlemen in the audience. Could you please stand up, sir, and introduce yourself, come up to the microphone?
My name's Derek Conrad, 245 South Main. Just a question, maybe you answer it just so it's clear to me. Did you make any calls or any contact with assessors that did say something to you in terms of diminishment that you didn't include in your report here? Or is this all of them?
This is all.
Okay, thank you.
Please speak in the microphone, so.
Yeah, that was my question.
No, yeah, okay.
No, this is all the people I spoke with, these are all the results. This is the extent of it. After I got to 15, again, it started to be the same story. There's nothing close to diminution of value that anybody's seen. And the story started being the same.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. White? One more gentleman in the back. You might want to just stand aside for a minute. I think he's...
One question, first question anyway. What have we done to assess that these properties are anything similar to what we currently have as far as the neighborhood is concerned? I see Lafayette Road in Portsmouth, and we all understand Lafayette Road is Route 1 in Portsmouth, a very different neighborhood than we're talking on 152 in this area. That's my first question. And my second question is, we're basing it based on an assessor. Has anybody spoke to a real estate agent? Because as we've discussed before, we spoke to a real estate agent that told me that I already had to disclose this. The moment that I did, it affected my property value. And going down the road, I can tell you that rest assured, based on everyone that I've talked to in the real estate business, that if I was given the opportunity to buy a single-family Cape on a street that's next to this building here, and one that is on another street that isn't next to this building, I'm going to choose the one that isn't next to this building every single time, and that's going to affect my property value. And that's based on a real estate agent, not necessarily the assessment. The assessment may not change necessarily, but the property value certainly is changing, and that's not necessarily completely reflected in the assessment.
Okay, I'll let Mr. White address that.
To the first question, I would say that New Hampshire is very unique, where no property type is the same. We have mill buildings, we have urban areas, we have wood frame properties, we have malls, and the same goes for affordable senior housing developments. They're similar, but they're different. At some point in time, if you survey as many properties as I did and talked to as many assessors, if there was any diminution in value, it would have shown up somewhere with a survey of this size. I talked to a lot of the major assessors not only in our area but in the state, and again, none of them had any inclinations of, hey, you got to go look at this property. I've heard of this. There was nothing outside of what I looked at. No, is there anything exactly the same as this type of property? No, but that could be said for each of the comparables that we looked at. Everything's unique in New Hampshire.
If there was a problem, how would that show itself? Would it show itself in people asking for abatements, or is
that's
there
one way.
something?
That's one way. Usually it might show up with somebody coming in for abatements. Hey, they put this property in, I think my property's over assessed, and they file something. The assessor may not, give them any kind of award on the assessment, but it's noted. Nobody had even that type of a claim against the property after these were done.
Wait, I'm sorry, what do you mean nobody had that type of claim?
Nobody filed for an abatement in any of these situations that I've talked about.
Nobody filed for abatement on any?
On any of them. When I said, did you have any abatements? I also asked them, have you ever had, sometimes even outside of abatements, people start talking about a property type and they want to, the assessor to look into do a study. Have you ever been requested by the municipality to do a study on affordable senior housing, and if there's been a diminution of value? And nobody even had that request made. So it's not even on the radar screen that I could find.
Okay. Does anybody else have any more questions?
I don't know if this is a fair question at this time, so I'll defer to...
Is it relative to the subject?
Yeah, I think it is.
We'll ask it then.
Okay. Is it fair to ask the people in the audience, if this was put in, would you ask for the assessor to reevaluate your home?
Well, I would answer that. I agree that somebody might. Some people are going to...
Oh, I totally get it. And I'm not saying they're going to get
Right.
it. I'm just asking,
Sure.
would they
Right.
now consider that?
Yeah, if they did, the assessor, because you have to be able to provide sales comps,
Right,
like on
right.
property, so it would be incumbent upon, the taxpayer applicant who would be filing for the abatement to provide the comps showing the diminishing value.
Understood, understood. But I'm just asking, is that something the people in the audience would ask for? If they had the evidence to substantiate it?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
But there's a process with that, as we all know. You don't have to
understood.
file for a data. You have to come in with data, comparable data. It's usually got to be done by an appraiser. Then both sides get their appraisals, and then you compare notes. A lot of times it doesn't even go that far. It just gets
Understood,
dismissed.
thank you.
I think the more appropriate approach would be to ask the town assessor to what is the valuations relative to abutting properties or neighboring properties near, let's say, the Bennett Way multifamilies
Understood.
versus Hirsch Lane,
Yep.
similar neighborhood, but very different location because of what it's about.
Yep, exactly.
That could render, you know, probably the information you're looking for.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Thank you. Oh, one more question, I think, for you, Mr. White.
I'm Liz Doust. I live at 255 Wadley Falls Road, and I have a question about the language we're using. I'm hearing elderly housing, I'm hearing senior housing. I just want to clarify that this is senior housing and that all the studies that were done on senior housing, because senior housing is 55 and older, and my understanding is elderly housing is in a different, more older age bracket than that. I think it's 65, 64 and up. So I'm concerned because the opening statements were that this was elderly housing and that studies about traffic, studies about parking and how many cars most people or drivers there are in the development were done. So I guess I'm just really curious, was that based on senior housing, which is 55 and older, or is it based on elderly housing, which is 64 and older? And I also have a question, the studies and statistics they looked at for the number of parking spaces based on drivers, was that done in rural towns or was that done in more inner city places like Manchester, Nashua, that have more, I'd say, public transportation options and that kind of thing? Because that would make a significant difference in just what we need.
Sure. Thank you. I would think that FX, you're the person to address the first question?
It's 55 and plus.
55, I'm sure it's
That's
55. but you
Yeah,
have
the
that
ordinance is
ordinance.
55.
Right.
Yeah, it's 55 and older. And that-
I think the question was, what were the studies based upon?
Right.
Our ordinance is 55 and older.
Yeah, I'll let Brian talk to you about how he approached that question with the assessor.
all the studies.
I understand, but right, but it starts with, please, sir.
55 and older.
So let's talk with the traffic guy first.
The short answer is yes. The traffic study was done with 55 plus age restricted. It's its own land use code. Short answer is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Sarah Horahan from Mossel Architects. I can speak to the parking. So we've worked with several affordable housing developers who do senior housing, which is 55 plus. We looked at data from around New Hampshire and Maine for these properties. In dense urban areas, we actually found that it was a 0.53 ratio, and the 0.6 comes from more rural applications similar to this community here. So that's kind of where that number came from, and it is 55 plus, not elderly housing.
In rural areas?
In
You
rural
got the 0.6
areas,
right.
correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just based on some of the documentation, in our minutes from August 8th, it says affordable elderly housing. And on the Underwood document dated September 11th, it does say elderly housing.
That's because that's what our ordinance is.
Right, but I guess to the point though, I just want to make sure that we are voting on senior. This is based on 55 throughout.
Your ordinance is entitled elderly
Elderly,
affordable
yep.
housing.
Yep.
And it's premised upon, as we just said multiple times, 55 and older.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to let Christian talk about one issue that was raised by one of the board members that we think we can address to, again, address the comments of the board.
And I just wanted to get this before you guys go to deliberation. So specific to creating a painted pedestrian walkway, while it would be within the drive aisle, down to and through the longer, we don't have any plans if they want, down through the parking areas, from the main door down to the dumpster. The developer would not have any issue with that, and if that is something that the board would prefer to see, he's happy to make that part of the plan.
Could you just show everybody, so everybody at home, and can we get that up on the, Mark, can you get that up on the screen too? For the people in the audience?
This guy's need, Tim, can you unchair, please? Thanks. Christian, what do you want? I didn't hear.
Just the site plan, Bart. The parking and paving would probably be the best one.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Sheet 1.
No, the more blown up one. There we go. Any of those.
Okay, hold on. Let me get a more delineated one. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. The one with the parking stalls. So essentially, you know, we've got the main door here. There could be just an extension of this this little line, landscaped, not landscaped, line striped partition between these two parking spaces. Run it basically 4 feet wide all along here down to the dumpster, and just maintain that as a painted pedestrian aisle. Yes, it would be within the travel aisle, but it would, you know, alert drivers coming in, drivers going out that there is a pedestrian way there, and you know, there would seem to be some benefit in, you know, avoiding conflicts between vehicles and folks walking within that.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and Mr. Lemieux is happy to take that on and make that part of the maintenance plan for the parking lot as well. Just wanted to get that before you guys go into deliberations.
So we're going to wrap up. My main comment is that you created an ordinance for a very important purpose. The main intent of the ordinance is to provide affordable elderly housing. You provided it in a very limited area. If this project can't meet the test that you created, you're never going to see a project in this town for that important type of housing that everyone, I think, without doing even any other research, and we've given you a lot, clearly this is needed. And you don't have to listen to me to understand that, because someone here spent a lot of time putting together a very important ordinance that we think we need. And so we appreciate all the information that we got from everyone. We did try to incorporate it, and I think we did a good job with that. So we appreciate, again, your time and patience.
Could you expand on that, X, because this is a use by right in the M districts, 1, 2, and 3. So it's only that the special use permit applies to the R2.
Right.
Or R1 or R3.
Right, and when you do it in the R1, R2, and R3, it's only on those roads.
Correct.
And those roads, if you drive them, which I did, again, you drive them, they present the way this parcel presents as well.
But you weren't trying to infer that it's only...
No,
the
and I
only
apologize
vehicles.
if that was the case.
Okay.
I'm talking about this ordinance, when it was created, it was crafted to take care of what the concerns were when you put a facility like that in one of these 3 zones. And then it was limited further to have water and sewer, and then limited
Sure.
further to very specific areas.
Not by right, but meeting the 5
Correct, by special
criteria.
permit. Yes, I agree with you. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
All right. Anybody in the public have anything else they'd like to add? So please come up, say your name and...
Hi, Linda Dozier, 249 South Main. First question, 55 and older. If 2 people are sharing a unit, do both of them have to be over 55?
Yes, please. I don't know the answer to that.
Sure.
But-
asked if there were people sharing a unit, you both have to be over 55.
Right. So the way the elderly housing and the 55 and older works is that one of the persons in that unit has to be 55 and older. That's how that works through the Fair Housing Act as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's different than the elderly housing, because all the other ones, and I have emails from them saying that both parties have to be the age requirement. So that means in this facility, if someone's 55, if their spouse is 48 or whatever, we could be having any ages moving in there, not just the elderly or over 55. Our other concern for safety in the neighborhood is we didn't see any fire access lane to get behind the building or to the side that doesn't have facing the parking lot.
I can answer that.
Okay.
At the TRC meeting, we met with Rick Malasky, the fire chief, and he doesn't need that. He's happy with what we have on that plan.
He's going to be able to get to the side that's not on the parking lot to rescue people to second, third floor.
He says he is.
Wadley Falls has fire access, and they're only 2 stories. It seems like it's kind of a safety thing, especially with the back of it meeting the woods, that if there's a fire, could spread over to Maple Crest or any of our houses. Parking. It is a compact area. There's not enough room to do it correctly. This kind of facility allows people to have visitors at extended time. There's going to be visiting nurses, physical therapy, cleaners coming in, maintenance. They need more parking. They can't use a school, that's a closed campus, and they don't want people there per conversation with them, because any additional parking that's left, if the staff doesn't have it, they need it for any meetings or anything that might be scheduled. And if someone is parking there in the evening and they're staying over with the residents, they're taking up the spaces for the staff in the morning. And it's also causing more safety for these people crossing that busy road in the evening or inclement weather time. So that's another safety problem there. The assessors, I think the assessment is done because of tax reasons, not because of the value of our homes. I don't think assessor will ever put a value of a home down because they want the taxes. It's the real estate agents that are trying to get the value of our home. Let me see, I'm sorry. The trees that they changed to the buffer, that really doesn't, in the ordinance, to buffer. They're 8 feet, and when I read about the white spruce, they grow approximately 2 feet a year. So they don't even cover any of this in 10 years. The Christmas tree-like trees down on the corner of Grant Road have been there approximately 20 years, and they're just covering the cape that's there now. So this is going to be a long time before there's any buffer on this apartment building, and that's what it is. It's not. They're comparing it with some other elderly housing, like in Durham or the Riverwoods. The Riverwoods are set completely farther back off the road than Wadley Falls is. So the houses they don't even see it. The other Riverwoods, the new one on 108, I believe that's the road going to Dover, there's no houses around that at all. And the other river, I think there's another Riverwoods in Durham, and that's farther out of town, completely off the road also. So none of those houses are even seen, none of those buildings are even seen by any of the houses next to it, so they probably wouldn't affect any of that. The people coming to look at the houses to buy probably don't even realize those homes are there. And also the parking. There's not enough room in the parking lot to put all the parking up near the building. So some of the spaces are down by the road, by the entrance, facing the road, which is a hindrance to the people that live across the street, because then there'll be headlights coming in and out of our houses. And these people are 55 or younger if they're sharing an apartment with someone. And I don't think they're just going to be in bed at 8 o'clock at night. They're going to be going out and perhaps even working. So there's going to be a lot of cars coming and going, and we're going to have to deal with the headlights coming in out of there because there's not enough room to put parking out near the home for them. Let's see what else I want to say. Exactly sort of about the trees. The design of the building is nothing like they keep comparing, like with Riverwoods. I'm sure some of you have probably been to Riverwoods. If not, you can look online or go there. It's beautiful. It's more of a colonial type. bay windows, it's like a bluish gray, or even Wadley Falls is even designed. The latest colors they want for this is a clay and brown, because they say it blends. So how does clay and brown blend with a New England neighborhood? It doesn't, and the abutters all agree with this. It does not attribute to the neighborhood at all. It takes away from the family setting. And also, another thing, animals. How many animals are they allowed each unit? Are they allowed, how many dogs? You have 32 units, is everybody going to have a couple of dogs over there? And
I don't think Newmarket has any ordinances for any properties as to the number of household pets.
so we could be listening to 60 dogs barking all night, whatever. So anyways, with your ordinances and stuff, I don't even think it really, if it doesn't fit in with the neighborhood, it takes away from it. The design does not go, the colors don't go. The parking is a real problem over there. Rick says that they put up no parking signs. I mean, if they try to park on the side of the road, they're going to be missing some doors in their cars. And they're going to be, safety is crossing that road if they think they're going to be parking at the school, and the school does not want them there, does not want anyone there. It's closed campus during the day. And if they park there at night, they'll be taking over the staff's parking. And it's also a safety with more people trying to cross that busy road. So, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Liz Doust, 255 Wadley Falls Road. And I wanted to just address a few things. Yes, we need, senior housing, and yes, I'm not against senior housing at all. My father-in-law for a number of years lived up the road from us in the Wadley Falls senior housing, and we were very thankful to have that place where he had friends, and it was safe, and it was clean, and it was comfortable, and I knew he could walk around the campus of Wadley Falls and of that area and be safe and be close by. I think what is the major issue for me is that in the ordinance, because we talked about language of the ordinance, it said it could be granted approval if the scope and size and bulk of the project is consistent with the adjacent properties, is consistent with the neighborhood. And what is proposed isn't. It is much, much larger than what's around it. It's much larger than I understand acreage-wise that property may allow the 32 units or even up to, I forget the number, I thought it was 40 maybe. But you also have to look at whether or not the property is appropriate for that use and the high degree of wetlands on that property and the usable space on that property don't make it appropriate for this size and scope of a project. I think, something smaller might fit there very well for senior housing. I understand what they're saying about it being close to town, but the parking is also a serious concern. I know we all talk about data, but I think if you've studied data, you can make data sound any way you want it to sound. It just depends on how you spin it. And I looked up some data myself, and I looked it up under the Federal Highway Administration, and it said people who are age 50 to 69, 93.5 of them are drivers, licensed drivers. It said if you look at the numbers between ages 70 and 84, 84.9 of those folks are licensed drivers. Look at this room. I'm 54, soon to be 55 in a year. I'm a licensed driver, and I'm certainly still driving my car, and I especially would ask all of you, how old are you? Are you still driving? So when you put an apartment house that then is going to have 1 to 2 people per unit, where else are they going to go? The nearest public parking is down on Railroad Street, which is over like 2/3 of a mile away, might be even approaching 3/4 of a mile away, which isn't really feasible. So it's not that I'm against senior housing nearby, I'm not. I'm just against something of this size and scope and bulk. That's all.
Thank you.
Gail Wachowski, 236 South Main Street. Could you tell me, are all of these apartments just one-bedroom apartments? All of them? And it also says that 75% of all the units on the site shall be identified as and remain affordable. What happens to the other 25%? If 75% are sold or are paying for affordable housing, what happens with the other 25%? Does that go to any price? Who determines the cost of that?
My name's David Lemieux, developer. These are all...
David, can you step up to the mic, please?
David Lemieux, I'm the developer. 100% of these are going to be affordable, not just 75, all of them are going to be
Okay, well, it does basically say that, but it says if, in fact, only 75% get filled, what happens to the 25%?
These, like I said, they're
So you're guaranteeing?
Guaranteeing 100% affordable.
Again, parking becomes a big issue. I'm 79 years old, I'm still driving. I have a car, actually, I have two vehicles. I am very concerned about parking on that corner. We've had an accident. How many accidents have we had up on Grant Road just this year alone? It's still, they put up another speed limit visual. People don't care. They're still going 40, 50 miles an hour. And of course, we're not checking the speed coming from the high school around that corner. We're only checking it going into town. So again, speed is a big problem there. And as Linda said, the school is restricted. The only time it's not restricted is summer. So where are the people who come that might stay for 2 weeks and visit them? Where are they parking for those 2 weeks? Where is the additional parking going to be? Right now, there's work being done on right at the top of the hill, just above Moonlight. And there are vehicles parked on both sides of the construction area, the people who are working the construction. So when a large truck is coming through town and I'm trying to go up 152, it's very hairy of how far you can go in either direction when one truck or vehicle is over the yellow line. Though there should not be allowed any parking on that road unless it's in a parking spot or in a garage, in a driveway. The other question I had was, is anyone on this board involved with this in any way, shape, or manner, being survey company or anything? And if so, if they are, because we've heard that there is somebody who worked for the survey company that's on the board.
And he has recused himself. He's
Of
not
all,
here, he's not
and
voting.
he will not be voting
He's
or
not
anything.
participating in this in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, I appreciate knowing that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening, I'm Lisa Henderson. I live at 6 Maple Crest Street. I have lived there for 18 years and I support this development. And to give some context as to why, I think it has to do with what I've experienced living in a mixed age neighborhood that has seen change over time as people age and need alternative places to receive either greater care or just a more manageable place to live. Two of my favorite neighbors, matriarchs of Maple Crest, who are no longer with us, were Lola and Aggie, and they both had a long history of volunteerism in this town, themselves and their spouses. They raised a lot of kids in those small houses, and as they aged, they received some support from family members and stayed in their homes, but by the time they were close to 90, and their husbands had passed, they were contemplating other options. And when I spoke to Lola, who lived right next door to me, she said that she is lonely a lot of the time because there's no one around during the day. And she would look for something, some other option were it to be available. At that time, she did move to the Pines, and that served her well for a period of time until she passed. Aggie was able to find housing, but not in Newmarket. She went to senior housing in Exeter, and she lived happily there according to her family members and flourished. So I think of these individuals who would desire some other opportunity than their single-family home. And this is the natural cycle that you hope for, that there are opportunities then that come in their place when folks choose to downsize and have options to do so. The folks that have moved into their homes now are young couples who just recently had babies or up to toddler years. One works as a teacher in our elementary school, another as a speech pathologist in a school, one works for Public Works in the region, and another for a housing authority. These are people that are contributing a lot to my quality of life in my neighborhood because they have been able to access some relatively affordable housing in our ever-escalating high-cost housing region. So were my previous neighbors able to secure senior housing in the vicinity of Maple Crest, we could have stayed in touch. We could have still integrated those folks into the community. Lola could still volunteer at the Newmarket Community Church, and Aggie could have seen her friends locally. This is why it matters and why we can't get hung up on the small stuff. And what bothered me seeing the landscaping plan is that we're putting, 50-foot trees in front of one little patio area in particular that would give residents an opportunity to look out on the world. I don't know about any of you who have aging parents, and if they do live in a age-restricted community or any place where there's something to watch, that's intrigue to see what's going on in your community and to feel part of it. And it feels like the plan here is to make them invisible and the property invisible. And I think we need to think about, are we trying to hide away our older adults in our community, or are we trying to retain them as citizens in Newmarket? So I would hope that we could look upon this with the big picture in mind. I also, when hearing the concerns about long-term visitors, these are one-bedroom apartments. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of room to stay for long periods of time. I don't think the data bears out that people have 20 or younger spouses typically that are going to be living with them in their home. And I believe that a lot of people won't have cars because the typical age, I think, moving into these communities is edging towards mid-80s into 90s. While the age eligibility is at 55, I don't think that's the reality because people are able to stay longer in their own homes or existing apartments. So this is an opportunity for Newmarket. It's zoned appropriately. I happen to have been part of the age-friendly communities endeavor for Newmarket in conjunction with Stratford Regional Planning. So I know that even there it's mentioned that the senior housing is a priority, let alone the master plan and this ordinance language. So let's stick to what we said we want and make it happen. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Linda Dozier again, 249 South Main. This is affordable living for people 55, but we just learned it could be younger than 55 going into the house, not just the elderly people. It's not just elderly. It's 55, and that is not elderly. That is still pretty young, and their spouses or whoever's sharing the apartment could be a lot younger than that. The people she spoke about, yes, longtime Newmarket residents. Aggie went to Exeter where her family resided, so she was with her family. And Lola was a longtime Newmarket, was at the Pines. The butters aren't against elderly housing. We're against putting this large complex building in a small space that just doesn't have the space for it, doesn't have the space for the correct parking, for the safety of the people that are going to be there. There's just not enough room for this type of a building, and it's not comparable to the ones that they mentioned. It's nothing like the Riverwoods, any of their projects. It's not like Wadley Falls. Wadley Falls, I have been also there a few times, and the times that I've been there, the parking lot has been mostly full. So I guess it just depends what time you go there. Some of the people that drive by, they stop because they like my flower garden or whatever, and they're in their 70s and they're driving. So they do need parking spaces.
Sir? Could you give your name for the record? I'm sorry.
Once again, Steve Sarasi, 240 South Main Street. Just once again reiterating something that's come up numerous times, and that's that nobody in this neighborhood is against elderly housing or affordable housing or senior housing. I don't think any of us has said that's a problem. I think what everybody agrees here in this neighborhood is that the size of this facility and the character of this facility is not such for this piece of property. If they want to build something smaller on this piece of property, if they want to split it out into a couple of buildings and do something a little bit differently, we're willing to entertain that. The problem is that the ordinance says any conflicts of character of the adjacent properties will be minimal in terms of size and bulk of the visible buildings. And then there's a second item in the ordinance that says the design and site layout of the development shall emphasize the rural character of the town. This facility doesn't do either of those things. We heard in a previous meeting that the size of this building was comparable to some of the other buildings in town. They used the high school and they use the elementary school as their comps. Last time I checked, both of those buildings are beautiful brick structures. We're not talking about a beautiful brick structure that fits into the historical character of this neighborhood. We're talking about something that looks like it belongs on Nantucket, you know, that was built for a small motel. So, really, like I said, it comes down to the fact that this is just too big of a facility for this property. And that's why they have parking problems, that's why they have size of building problems, because they're trying to cram something that's way too large onto a piece of property. Yeah, okay, based on the 7 acres and based on some of the wetlands, we're cramming it into a corner of this to make it happen. And we're forcing something, or trying to force something, that isn't necessarily right for this piece of property.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have a presentation.
Yeah, I got it right here.
Thanks, Bart.
Yep.
Yeah. Could you give your name, please, and address?
You betcha.
Can you see this?
Perfect. Hi, Newmarket Planning Board. My name is Ed Sarossi. I am the owner of the property at 240 South Main Street, and I'm a direct abutter to the proposed project. I will try to keep this brief. My goal was to examine the ordinance, which has come up several times. Going to try to stick strictly to facts and not opinion statements in this presentation. I have a couple intro slides, but after those, we'll get into the meat and potatoes, which is strictly the ordinance. So if we could do the next slide here. So I wanted to introduce it with the pros of affordable housing. As a lot of people have said, we aren't, the abutters are not against affordable housing. If you do research on affordable housing, you'll find there is a large problem across the U.S. of affordable housing. That problem is particularly large here in New Hampshire. I pulled a few articles, these are all from 2023, which talk about how much New Hampshire is trying to do to address these problems. There's hundreds of millions of dollars being made in support of these projects, so it's a large issue that needs to be addressed. And the conclusion here is that affordable housing is an issue and, you know, not something that we should be shaking our heads at. Next slide, please. So potential issues to consider, I can run through this one pretty quickly, would be depreciation of property values, deterioration of the neighborhood, increases in vacancy rates, increases in incidences of criminal activity, and increases in litter, noise, and interference with residential properties owners' enjoyment of their property in the vicinity of the building. Next slide, please. So, to get into the ordinance, section 32-236E-2 states that the public interest will be served generally if the proposal were to establish affordable elderly housing on the site, and the establishment of affordable elderly housing complex on the site would not cause a diminution in property values. So, it's important to think of our properties are valuable investments for the future. A decrease in property values for the abutters could mean reduced return on investment, affecting our financial stability and long-term plans. The neighborhood residents have worked hard to acquire and maintain their homes. Not only is just our neighborhood associated with affordable elderly housing, but the elementary school will also be affected. Potential buyers might favor other areas that have a more upscale reputation. It is not hard to find elementary schools throughout the state that do not have affordable elderly housing across the street. Next slide, please. So to continue looking at this ordinance and to get into it a bit, you can look at a lot of angles and speculate if the abutters properties values will decrease, but the property value of the current house on the lot to be subdivided will decrease, right? Right now it's worth X, and if you subdivide it and build a giant building next to it, it will be worth Y. And the concern with that is when the value of one lot decreases, it can have a ripple effect on the neighboring lots and the broader real estate in the area. And that's based on everything from comparable sales, perceived desirability, aesthetic and maintenance impact, and investor sentiment. So it's important to look at all the houses. The next section of the ordinance I'd like to look at is section 32-236E-3. That any conflicts with the character of the adjacent properties will be minimal in terms of size and bulk through the use of buffers, landscaping, or location of buildings on site. This provision is meant to assure that facilities are reasonably consistent either with residential style buildings or sufficiently secluded so as to minimize negative impacts to abutting property. The proposed plan presents a clash in architectural styles that could lead to a perception of neglect or disregard for the neighborhood's unique character. This could impact property values not solely due to the introduction of affordable housing, but because of the resulting imbalance and loss of visual coherence. I'll skip the middle bullet here, but I'll go on to talk about the seclusion. 8-foot trees would not provide a secluded building as the above code states. 8-foot trees would offer 22% coverage of the building. That's based on 8 divided by 35 feet is 22.8, leaving 78% of the building exposed. This 78% of the building will be viewed by the abutting properties and elementary school. This is an example from the Rochester, New Hampshire building that this builder has done of trees not providing sufficient seclusion. The drawings they have are absolutely beautiful, but at some point we have to look at the reality of what's been done in the past and what it is. And that's my note on this slide here. The next ordinance section I would like to talk about is section 32-36E-5. The design and site layout of the development shall emphasize the rural character of the town, maximize the privacy of dwelling units, preserve the natural character of the land, and provide by separation of parking. The main thing I wanted to focus on here was the word rural. So the code clearly states the design and site layout of the development shall emphasize the rural character of the town. I looked up the definition of rural for everyone today. It means in relating to or characteristic of the countryside rather than town. Similar words are country, countryside, pastoral, rustic, and agricultural. Next slide, please. Everyone loves to call it a Holiday Inn, so I put the Holiday Inn picture up there. Again, you can look at the seclusion, but the question here would be, does this look rural? Question for the planning board, does this look rural? Yes or no? For the planning board, next slide, please. And then my conclusion, the big conclusion here, New Hampshire has an affordable housing issue. This is not an argument against affordable housing. Property values could decrease. The building does not fit in with the aesthetic of the neighborhood and will not be properly secluded. The building does not emphasize the rural character of the town. So section 32-236E2, 3, and 5 are not met by the current plans. last bullet's a little dramatic, but I said the planning board needs to be held responsible for this decision. The developer is simply doing their job. The planning board needs to do theirs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Thank you. Anybody else have anything to add?
When the ordinance was developed, I asked the question, you look at the maps and you divide what's R1, 2, and 3. You don't go specifically down a street and say, no, this shouldn't be included in that. You just look at the map and say, oh, this part of town is R1, this R2, R3. So basically, maybe you never went down this street to think that this large building could be put there. Or maybe it was put in that ordinance because of Wadley Falls to accommodate that building, which is a nice building, secluded off the road. I'm just thinking that when the ordinances are done, that it's not done looking at each specific area. It's just looking at a big area at a time and not just how it would affect one single street or whatever.
Typically, that's how it's done. Typically, that's how it's done, yes.
Yes. Thank you.
This
Yeah, I do have a
particular
couple
ordinance was
written.
adopted in 2002.
R1, I believe.
I don't know if
R2
that's
or R1.
over 20 years old.
I can look.
It's gotta be close.
No, almost.
That's why he's not here.
That's why I'm not there.
All right,
So I do have a couple emails sent for public comment, Mr. Chair, if I can try to read those.
Yes.
If you can hear me.
Yep,
Great.
go ahead.
All right, thank you. Let me share it. My screen. Okay, can you see this? Great.
Yes, sir.
Mr. McDonough, I had planned to attend this evening's planning board meeting, but due to scheduling conflict, will not be able to present. I hope this email can be entered into the record to reflect my strong opposition to the approval of this project. I reviewed the previous meeting minutes and the project documents. In short, this project does not meet the requirements of a special use permit. There is a reason that this use is permitted in the M zones and only allowed by special use permit in the R2 zone. There are certainly elderly housing developments that, by their scope and design, are appropriate within the R2 zone. The proposed project is not one of them. The project is far too large for the surrounding neighborhood. As pointed out in Mr. White's appraisal report, the neighborhood consists of modest single-family homes. The proposed structure is not so out of character with the surrounding neighborhood. It does not pass the straight face test. Yes, Pines is nearby, a modest one-story facility, nothing like the proposed. Likewise, Wadley Falls Senior Housing is also nearby. However, the siting of that facility on the property makes it incomparable to the eyesores that the proposed building will impose. This is in direct conflict with approval criteria 3 in section 32-236E of Newmarket zoning ordinance. Likewise, the design does not comply with approval criteria 5 in that the development in no way emphasizes the rural character of the town, is not appropriate for the neighborhood setting of this section of South Main Street. While Mr. Woodburn is a very talented landscape architect, the landscaping cannot hope to adequately separate the proposed development from the adjacent residential uses, given the inappropriately oversized building and associated appurtenances relative to the development area available. I am no way opposed to the development of this parcel. A more reasonably sized proposal is completely appropriate for the property. However, I'm strongly opposed to the proposed development, particularly when it is not allowed by right. The applicant purchased this property knowing that the desired use was not permitted, but only allowed by special use permit. Zoning ordinance gives the planning board the authority to grant the right, but does not require it to do so. The applicant is simply attempting to maximize their profits at the expense of our town, good planning, and future residents of the development. Thank you for your time, Paul Galberstein, 229 South Main Street. And then the next one, let's see. Dear Mr. Chairman and board members, this is a written formalized request. Oops, sorry. That's yours, Christopher. Let me see. I have one more. Let me find it. I do have one second, I apologize. Okay, I'm just gonna read it from my email because it was received there. It reads, dear Plan Board members, please read my letter of support into the official Plan Board public hearing record and know that if it were possible, I would address the board in person. My name is Ernie Clark. I'm a former 37 years executive director of the Newmarket Housing Authority, and although I'm not a resident, I consider Newmarket my second home. I'm writing in support of J.R. Lemieux Builders' application for construction of 32 units of affordable senior housing.
Hey,
Newmarket's last project this type.
Bart?
Yeah.
Susan, do you have this one?
Can you hold on for a second? It's hard to hear you. Can you just hold on for a sec?
Yeah.
Can you put that one on the screen?
Yeah, I'm trying. Hold on a second. Can you hear me now? Can you see this?
Oh, there we go.
Okay, now we have it.
All right. Newmarket's last project of this type was over 10 years ago. The project was opposed by some abutters, yet today it has become an important community asset, aiding Newmarket's elderly to be able to remain residing in their hometown. David Lemieux is a quality contractor and advocate for affordable senior housing and understands building to community standards. Lemieux has been very successful building affordable senior housing in Rochester, and I'm excited that he and his associates want to build in Newmarket. I wish the Newmarket Housing Authority was able to build with David R. Lemieux. I hope it will happen one day. Aside from all the positive testimony I can share, I wish to make you aware that there is a long list of applicants for one-bedroom apartments at Terrace and Newmarket House and at Wally Falls. Specifically, a 60-year-old applying for housing through Newmarket Housing Authority will be in their 70s before an apartment becomes available. Thank you for your consideration, Ernie Clark.
Is that it?
Those are the ones I received by email.
Thank you. All right, so we started July 1st official meeting, and a lot of information, a lot of things have transpired. We had a TRC meeting, had a site walk. One thing the board, we've gone through a lot of the technical stuff with review engineers and the TRC. One thing as a board we've never spoken about is the topic of conversation criteria for approval. So I'd like to discuss with the board their thoughts on the criteria for approval. Does everybody have those in front of them by any chance? So for the special permit, we would need to go through these 8 criteria and find that the project satisfies each criteria individually. So we've never discussed this at all, so I'd like to talk about this at this point, get people's input, find out where we are. So I'll start with number 1. Any site on which an affordable elderly housing complex is proposed shall be reviewed with respect to the availability of shopping services, medical services, and transportation services thereto, and that the proposed construction and design of the affordable elderly housing complex shall contain the usual amenities and living aids found in housing
designed for use by the elderly and as required by state and federal law such as accessibility features, community features, facilities, etc. And I guess I'm remiss too that FX Bruton has given us a letter. In the original package, there was a letter explaining why they believe they meet all these criteria. So let's start the discussion. What's everybody think about criteria 1 relative to this site? Somebody want to start?
Well, in regards to shopping and medical services, those are available fairly proximate to this proposed development. Unfortunately, Newmarket doesn't have public transportation at this point, so there isn't really any option other than driving. I think that is important to note because of the way the whole parking situation is set up and this whole idea that people really won't be driving when there's a lot of necessity to drive to live in this community. There really isn't any option but to drive. For someone living here, they're reliant on a car. And I just don't see any other way around that. But as far as proximity to medical, I mean, Lamprey Healthcare is down the road, so I guess there is medical close by. There's some shopping available downtown, although I think most people would find they need to drive to neighboring communities to get what they really need. So that's one of my concerns is it seems to be that they're implying that people don't need cars who live here. They do.
Well,
it's essential.
I mean, I think that's relevant to virtually any parcel in town, right? Most people in town, especially elderly, go out of town for doctor's appointments and whatnot. They have to. There is no spot in time to put any building and say you don't have to drive to go to the doctor's office or your dentist or shopping or whatever. It's the town. What's everybody else think?
Well, I think additionally on this matter, again, obviously we have to go by the regulations. It doesn't say public transportation services. So there are ride shares and healthcare has a transportation facility. I mean, vehicles are transportation services. So providing parking for a resident, does that qualify under this section of the ordinance for transportation services?
But this is affordable housing, and those programs don't tend to be, if you're talking about Uber or Lyft, that's not an affordable option for somebody who's living in low-income housing.
I'm talking about there are several elderly services for bringing people to different locations. And it's something we're looking to promote for folks. And Lamprey Healthcare is one of them. There are several others. And there are several residents in Newmarket who actually volunteer as drivers for these services. I just think relative to the regulation here, it doesn't say public transportation services. It's simply transportation services. And again, I'm just dealing with number 1 on the criteria.
Scott?
I agree with Patrick. I think that driving is going to be key, and I think parking is going to be an issue.
Yeah, I mean, anybody, like I said, anybody in town drives. You have to drive somewhere.
Yeah, and although there may be people who volunteer, you suddenly need 35 more people. So I would imagine the people who are volunteering are already busy.
I mean, I understand that, and I get that there's no place in town, like I said, where you could put a building and say you don't need to drive.
Right.
It just doesn't happen in town. So this doesn't make this spot any different than anywhere else in town. But I know we're talking a lot about parking, we're going to talk more about parking, but I do this, I trust the professionals that they say there will be enough parking there, there will be enough parking there. I happen to believe that, but that's not for this particular item. Anybody else? Michael, what do you have to say about this? Okay. Abigail, anything?
I agree with Val on, there's transportation, doesn't have to be public, there's a wildcat trying to be able to go through, and I don't think people are posting.
Not anymore.
Anymore.
Jane?
I think it meets it, the shopping, the medical, and to Val's point. I also do see Patrick's point, though, as well. I don't think, it doesn't exceed it.
Okay. All right, on to, just trying to get people's opinion here. Number 2, the public interest will be served generally if the proposal were to establish affordable elderly housing on the site and establish an affordable elderly housing complex on the site would not cause a diminution of the property values of surrounding parcels. So we've heard a lot of discussion about that over the course of the last 2 months. So, Scott, why don't you start? What's your...
Well, we have 2 real estate people here. Maybe their opinions would be a little more valuable.
We have real estate here.
We have Abigail and we have Val.
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah.
That would be like asking Eric to weigh in on the engineering.
Right. But, the whole discussion about diminution of property values is, we have a report on that also.
Right.
Right. Now, people may disagree with that report, but I take it at face value, especially where our assessor agrees with it, where they say there isn't going to be. But other people disagree with it. I mean, I understand that. So what's everybody's opinion on this?
Well, I look at the first part there where it says that the public interest will be served generally if the proposal were to establish affordable housing on the site. So when I look at the site and I look at this particular project, not the idea of affordable housing, but this project, I see a project that has, on its surface, the idea of affordable housing. I don't think anyone is in disagreement that that's a good thing that serves the public interest. I think the public interest question is that the building exceeds the site. And that is outside of the public interest, because if we put buildings where they don't belong in our town, I think that sends a signal that's not in the public interest. It says a signal that we're not considering the people around, who live around the building. We're not considering what looks best in our town. This building is huge for the site, and I feel like that is a huge part of the public interest. When we did the walk, and I know you guys weren't there, and you saw the balloons, how high in the sky they were, it was amazing. It was like, this building is colossal compared to everything else around it. And to ignore that is to not consider the public interest, in my mind. You can't separate that. Now, if this was, like other people have talked about, a one-story building, that would look completely different. I mean, that would really fit this neighborhood. So I don't think it's about the nature of the housing, it's the size. And I think that would be in the public interest. So that's where I feel like there's a break with that. It's the size that's not in the public interest, not
So you're
the
concerned
idea
about
of it.
the size of the building?
Yeah, not the idea of affordable elderly housing.
Jane, what do you think?
I agree with Patrick.
You agree that
The size of the
the
building.
building is too big?
Yeah, and I think it will diminish the value of the properties surrounding. It's my own
think it
personal
will?
opinion.
Okay. In spite of the information we have?
Yeah, I think being, and I'll just put it this way, when you go into the town clerk's office, there's that little diagram there, a cartoon thing, it says what you think the value of your home is, and what the assessor thinks the value of your home is, right? So I've got that playing in the back of my head the entire time, so the value of the assessor is very different than what the market value of the home could be. And for many people, Their home is their retirement, it's their future.
Okay. Scott?
Well, I absolutely agree that I think it's way too big for the site. I think it's like being put in with a shoehorn. But whether that affects the valuation, I don't know.
Mikhail?
I'm sure this one's going to be both sides.
I trust Brian's research. I mean, I know Brian White for a long time, and he does a great job with the properties that he does assess. I do agree that it is a very tall building, but we're trying to make units for people to live into. If you take off, the height, you're taking away units from people that need to.
Val, what are your thoughts?
So again, under the language of the ordinance, we've been provided no evidence to dispute the appraisals, that was submitted to us that we're relying on. I think certainly relative to the rights that are allowed here, take like a nursing home, for instance, that wouldn't be coming through the special use process. So we're trying to make the same comparison that if a nursing home of the same size was built here, which would be permitted without going through the special use permit, this wouldn't even apply. So I haven't seen anything that's going to lead me to believe, and I am in real estate, that there would be diminution on property. And I brought up the Bennett Way area versus Hershey Lane, and I haven't seen that. I do understand where Patrick's coming from relative to the public interest on a particular location.
Okay, thank you. Next. That any conflicts with the character of the adjacent properties will be minimal in terms of the size and bulk of the visible buildings, through the use of buffers, landscaping, and location of the buildings on the site. This provision is meant to assure that facilities are reasonably consistent either with the residential style buildings or sufficiently secluded so as to minimize negative impacts to abutting property. So, I think I know where this one's going. Scott?
Yeah, it's way too big. It doesn't fit the neighborhood. The design of the building has, does look like a hotel or motel, and I don't think it fits at all.
Jane?
I agree, Scott.
Patrick?
Yeah, I think that's pretty well established that it's just the scale. Although I appreciate what they're trying to do as far as their energy efficiency. I really appreciate that thoughtfulness and that part. But yeah, it's just way too big.
Abigail?
I agree.
Mikhail?
Val?
Yeah, again, I do agree. I think there's this conflict in our ordinance. We talk about sufficiently secluded, which I think that they are trying to do and probably could achieve with, going a step further on the landscaping plans. But I think that might be contrary to the actual ordinance, which is relative to the rural character of the neighborhood, because there's no other properties along this road where something is, buffered by landscaping. So I'm just having difficulty with that provision in the ordinance.
So what, you're saying that you can use buffering and landscaping too.
Well, I think, yes, they are sufficiently,
So
because
soften.
it's not an and, it's an or. So they are sufficiently secluding this. Are they minimizing any negative impacts to the abutting properties? We're asking the ordinance to actually seclude something, yet it's contradictory with the character in the other provision of the ordinance, because we don't have any buffers or seclusion of buildings along this area. Okay.
Next, the development shall be landscaped so as to enhance its compatibility with the town with emphasis given to the use of existing natural features where possible. Mikhail, how about you start in this one?
I guess they did a really good job with the landscaping. The problem is the mistake with this that's the size, desired size.
Thank you. Abigail?
I mean, it's very well landscaped. It's obviously hiding the building as much as it can, but as like Val just said, none of the other properties along that road are landscaped in such a way that make it compatible.
I agree with what Abby just said.
Jane?
I thought the landscaping was outstanding.
Scott?
I think that, landscaping has limitations, and I think that while they tried to do a very good job, the site requires more than landscaping can provide.
Yeah?
Just going back to my last statements,
Yes, okay. Number 5, the design and site layout of the development shall emphasize the rural character of the town, maximize the privacy of the dwelling units, preserve the natural character of land, provide for the separation of parking and neighboring residential uses, and consider such factors as orientation, energy uses, views, etc. Jane, why don't you start this?
Knew it. I believe that the design of the building was done with a lot of thought. I don't believe it matches the rural character of the town. I believe that they tried to address the privacy issue, but I can't give number 5 a positive review because of the rural character of the town.
Okay. Val?
it's my opinion, they meet these limits.
Scott?
I agree with Jane. Oh, Jane, that little lady with
I agree with Jane. I know that they tried to, change the orientation of the building to make it match a little bit better, but I agree with Jane.
Patrick?
I agree with Jane. It doesn't meet.
Mikhail?
Kind of move on about this one, so I'm not sure.
Undecided at this point?
Undecided.
Parking facilities shall comply with existing site plan review regulations unless the planning board authorizes waivers in accordance with information submitted showing a decreased need parking. The planning board may require land to be set aside for future parking facilities and require adequate financial security to assure its construction with the Newmarket site review regulations. Val, you want to start this one?
Well, predicated on that we would be authorizing the waiver, I think that the applicant has shown that they've met the actual regulations.
Jane?
I agree with Val.
Scott?
I agree with Val.
Patrick?
Yeah, they've complied.
Abigail?
I agree with Val.
75% of all units on the site shall be identified as and remain affordable in accordance with this section for as long as the on-site structures fail to comply with all of the zoning requirements of the underlying district. I think we heard Mr. Lemieux say tonight that 100% are going to be,
Right.
It would be part of any documentation that would happen. So I don't think we really need to talk about that.
No, I think they comply. I'm assuming
Yes.
that conditional approval would be a deed restriction.
Yep. And 8, affordable elderly housing facilities shall not include manufactured housing units. So we don't need to talk about that, they're not, just so they comply. All right. Oh, Mr. Bouton. So you've heard the discussion. We time-wise, either need to vote tonight or you need to request a continuance.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time the board has actually chatted about their thoughts in terms of where they're at. We've got a lot of, as much as I can hear, I hate to say it, it's kind of difficult to hear. But nonetheless, I heard enough to know that what the concerns are of the board. I talked to my client about trying to address those, so I'd like to ask that we continue to the next meeting. I'm going to tell you that if we can grapple with what the board is giving us in terms of feedback, I might actually continue that, but I think it would be good for us to just continue to your next hearing and then get to a point where we think we need a little bit more time to get better answers for you, then we'll just ask for that actually quickly.
Sounds good. Bart, are you on the screen still?
Yes, I'm here. So I think there needs to be a...
When's our next meeting?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, when's our next meeting, Bart?
October the 10th. 10th.
So, FX, I would assume that you want to continue all three items,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, correct.
Anybody else have anything to add to this while we're still discussing it? Any abutters, anything else? If we hear nothing, I'll entertain a motion to continue to our next meeting.
I make a motion that we continue the public hearing on the application to October 10th, 2023, based upon the applicant's request for continuance.
Is there a second?
You'll follow up with a written.
Yes, absolutely.
Is there a second?
Second.
Jane, second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
We'd like to thank you again for your patience. I know this is a lot of questions, a lot of opinions and inputs, so we appreciate that.
And just so you know, I mean, I wanted to get this on the record so that you had got the feedback that you need. It's the first time, like, you gave us a presentation, we had a site walk at TRC, but you never heard us discuss the requirements, so I wanted to make sure we did that tonight.
I understand it, and I thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you. Right, so the next agenda item is a discussion, which we're not going to have tonight. I think we had discussed at the last meeting to put this on the next agenda as a public hearing. So there's no need to discuss this. It is, but this is on the agenda for the discussion to amend the downtown ordinance. It'll be on the agenda as a public hearing for the next meeting.
Yeah, so I'm still waiting on Val's question about some of the language about waivers. I'm still waiting from legal counsel on clarification on that route.
I can't hear.
No, we
Bart,
can't.
I'll update. So Bart is still waiting on the review of John Radigan, the town attorney, as to the questions we had from the last August meeting. And then also at the August meeting, the motion was revised to move this to a public hearing October 10th. So it should not have been on today's agenda, really, to begin with. And I'm assuming, Bart, you'll just get that opinion to us when you hear back from John?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
So I'm still waiting to hear back from John.
Yeah.
And once I get clarification, I can craft the ordinance.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
October 10th is the next meeting.
Yes, yes. So, new business, old business, chairman's report. Bart, can you hear me well and clear?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, all right, so I don't have a report, but I would like you to look something up for me.
Can you guys?
Hey, excuse me.
Sorry, could
Guys,
you take
you guys-
that conversation outside? Thank you.
Bart, so I received a complaint relative to handicap parking at the plaza where Deciduous is and Panzanella's. As you know...
Can you repeat that one more time, Eric?
So I received a complaint about lack of handicap parking at the plaza where Deciduous and Panzanella's and Kume is. As you know, a few years ago, I think during COVID,
Deciduous put out, they were allowed to put out take some parking spots.
Yes.
And this person in particular complained that he believes they took some handicap parking spots. Can you look into that? Can you look into that?
We'll look into that, and I think they have expired their COVID emergency, so we'll look into that. Same thing with Stone Church too. We gotta take a look at that stage, so, that they have there. So, yeah, there's a couple lingering items there that our office will take care of.
Yeah, so I seem to remember that they had, that whole development, I think, had a little bit more parking than it needed. But, I mean, the concept, I don't have a problem with the concept of have them using that, but we need to make sure we're in compliance with handicap parking.
Correct, yes.
But,
Yep,
but
we'll look
it's a
into
change
that.
it's a change of the approved site plan anyways.
Right.
I mean, as a temporary measure, that's fine, but is it gonna be there forever, is it, you know?
Exactly, no, we'll look into that.
How did those businesses get that? Did the council vote on those?
No.
No.
Or that was just a,
I don't remember, I wasn't here then.
I know
At
how
the-
it was, yes, the code enforcement officer permitted it. I had the conversation with him at that time, because no one ever came before the planning board for an amended site plan.
Right.
And his premise was that he had the authority under the emergency COVID action to be able to do that.
Yeah, it never came to town
And
council.
Eric brings up the real question is, the enforcement of site plan, of approved site plans, and then anything's changed after the fact, and they're not, being maintained, the property is under accordance with the site plan. This just happens to
Right.
be an example of one.
About 3 months ago, right in front of Kume, they changed all the signs. They took all the old signs down and they put up new signs.
oh, I didn't know that.
So I think they may have moved the park, the handicap parking.
So we don't have any, on our site plan approvals for that development, we weren't restricting what signs went where, because the only premise was that we had a certain public number. The developer had the right to assign whatever.
Yeah, I'm
spaces
just saying they
he
just
needed.
changed all the, I remember, in the summertime, they changed all that.
But again, under that site plan regulation, there are a certain number of public parking spaces.
Yeah, and I mean, I honestly never would have brought it up if somebody had complained to me. If you need a handicap spot and there isn't one available, I understand that can be a problem.
Yeah.
I think it's 8 spaces, I think.
All right, so you'll look into that for us, Bart?
Yes.
That's all I have. Does anybody else have anything else as committees or anything?
We had a joint meeting between the town council and the school board. And the school board would like to, which is something we do every year. And they want the planning board to be part of that. They want a 3-party system because the planning board they're worried you're too focused on 55-plus communities and you're not focused on building houses for kids, that kids will be in, right? And the school population is declining, and they think we should do more to encourage young families because it's already becoming an elderly town, and the age of the population is declining or increasing. Sorry.
Welcome to New Hampshire.
Yeah. I'm just
We only said
yeah, I thought it was funny. They thought the planning board was going to wave a magic wand and make these various things happen. And
We can only discuss what somebody puts in front of us.
yeah. So there's a plan that was presented there that is being developed at Town Hall to the police need more room for evidence. They need an evidence room. They need a bigger evidence room. And so they've looked at adding a whole addition onto the police station. That addition has been costed out at $9 to $10 million. And it's going to get rid of the senior center, the Sunrise Sunset Center. And then the Sunrise Sunset Center will move to the Beach Street extension, that little building there. So they're going to renovate that building. This is 2025, we're talking about. Okay, so it's not right away. And then Town Hall, this building, they want to renovate and they want to put a lot of the business stuff like on this floor, and they want to have an extension in the back so that everything you do is drive-through. So you want to get driver's license and all that, you can do it with a drive-through station. That's going to be like $8 to $9 million.
Wow, we must be a rich town.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a concern that I've got because,
Have they calculated the impact on the tax rate?
well, Steve is pretty excited because we just did some kind of an assessor. I didn't fully understand it, but we are now valued at $1.002 billion in tax rate. So $1 is $1 million. Yeah. So all of a sudden, he's thinking, I think we got a lot of money. And then we're going to do.
So that's an addition on the police station. That's more than an evidence room.
Yeah,
For $9 or $10 million.
expensive.
I mean, maybe they need it. I'm not saying that. It's just much more than a building. An evidence room to me is a 12 by 12. Yeah.
I've never actually been in the police station.
I'm just saying that an evidence room is.
Well, that was the rationale for it. Yeah.
Is there a conceptual or something? Must be.
Yeah. I think it's on the. I think it's actually.
Yesterday.
I think it's actually on the web. Bart, you have a copy of it all, right?
Yeah, I can share with people.
Yeah. So then they're going to do an evaluation of the library, and they're going to do an evaluation of the rec center as well. And then the Art and Tourist Committee is going to make a park in front of the Wiley House. I don't know if it's just, planting a tree or something. They cut those 2 trees down, but they're going to convert that into a park. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Well, I've got one more thing just to let everybody know. I think Steve Fournier is setting up a meeting with himself and all department heads. He's got a bunch of topics to talk about. So it may happen next week. Whenever it happens, I'll let you know what the topics were that impact us anyways. So,
Was there discussion though of the joint planning board, town council meeting? I thought we were set up to do that in September.
I don't know, maybe. Between town council and planning board. Yeah, this was, they wanted to have on with the school board.
But no discussion of the joint town council?
No, I have no,
Anybody else have anything to do?
We are no longer working with those consultants on the what do they call them? Gateways, yeah. Apparently now Bart's got something with Stratford County or something, right? Aren't you doing something now?
Yeah, so the master plan update, that's what you're speaking to?
Bart, we're talking about the gateways.
Well, it's a master plan though, right?
Yes, so we're working with Stratford Regional, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so we're working with Stratford Regional Planning Commission. They're going to help us with the rezoning. And then we, as a subcontractor for the land use part, we're hiring Ivy Band. So we'll be working with those 2 people for the rezoning, or those 2 entities. And then Stratford Regional Planning Commission is going to help us with the whole master plan update.
Yeah, we just allocated $90,000 for that.
Right, so I'm basically going to town council requesting money to be taken from the capital reserve fund to fund the master plan update. The rezoning is all paid for through grants, so.
Okay, thank you, Bart. Anybody have anything else?
Energy environment, I wasn't there, but I do know that out of the last meeting, they just reported, Joe Amatino's, the council representative, reported that the community energy plan is moving forward. It's being reviewed, I think, at this point by the town's attorney and staff and everybody. And then the next point will come back to the town council, I think, for a vote at some point.
Excellent. Anything else? Yes?
Clark, send me the letter from Ernie Clark, please. Just forward
Yeah.
the email to me,
Yeah,
wherever it is. Your eyes are darting back and forth.
no, I will send it, yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Right. Bart, one last communication, good luck.
Thank you.
Wish you well.
Thank you.
Wish you well. Jane,
I make a motion we adjourn.
is there a second?
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you all.